hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The late afternoon sun cast long fingers of light through the kitchen window as Luke Halloran stirred a pot of pasta sauce. The rich scent of tomatoes and herbs filled the air, mingling with the steady drum of rain against the window. He glanced at his watch, 5:45 p.m. Cora would be finishing her homework soon, and Lila should be home any minute. Luke wiped his hands on a dish towel and moved to the window. Outside, the rain had transformed their suburban Oakbrook yard into a patchwork of puddles. Despite the weather, his 12-year-old daughter was kicking a soccer ball against the garage door, her auburn hair darkened by the rain. He tapped on the glass. "Cora, dinner in 15, he called, though he doubted she could hear him through the window and rain. The front door opened with a whoosh of cool air. Lila stepped inside, shaking raindrops from her umbrella. "You're late," Luke said, his tone neutral despite the slight tightening in his chest. Third time this week. Lila hung her coat on the rack by the door. Traffic was awful. Everyone forgets how to drive when it rains. She didn't meet his eyes as she spoke, instead busying herself with arranging her shoes neatly by the door. "I started dinner," Luke said, returning to the stove. "Cora is still outside. Can you call her in? She needs to wash up." Lila nodded, moving to the back door. Luke watched her for a moment, noting the slight stiffness in her shoulders. Something had been off for weeks now. Little things, late arrivals home, hush phone conversations, a certain distance that hadn't been there before. Nothing he could pin down exactly, but enough to plant a seed of unease. Through the window, he watched Lila step onto the back porch, waving at Cora. Their daughter took one last powerful kick at the ball, sending it soaring toward the fence. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Cora turned, her foot catching in a slick patch of grass. Her arms pinwheeled as she fought for balance, then she crashed down hard. Even from inside, Luke could see the awkward angle of her fall, the way her right arm twisted beneath her. The scream that followed cut through him like a knife. Luke was through the back door in seconds, the rain instantly soaking through his shirt. Cora lay on the grass, clutching her right arm to her chest, her face contorted in pain. "Don't move, honey," he said, kneeling beside her. "Let me see." Gently, he examined her arm. Even through her wet sleeve, he could see the unnatural angle. His stomach dropped. "It's broken," he said to Lila, who hovered at his shoulder, her face pale. "We need to get her to the hospital. Now." The emergency room buzzed with fluorescent lights and hushed conversations. Luke sat beside Cora on the examination table, his hand steady on her shoulder as the doctor examined her arm. "It's a clean break," Dr. Patel said, studying the X-ray displayed on the computer screen. "But she'll need surgery to properly set the bone." Luke nodded, absorbing the information. "How soon?" "We can do it tonight," the doctor replied. "It's better not to wait with this type of fracture." As the doctor continued explaining the procedure, Luke noticed the X-ray again. Something caught his eye, a small, bright spot near Cora's elbow joint, distinct from the bone structure surrounding it. "What's that?" he asked, pointing at the screen to Dr. Patel frowned, leaning closer. "That's unusual. It appears to be some kind of metallic object." "Metallic?" Luke echoed, bewildered. "How would that get there?" "I'm not sure," the doctor admitted. "It's not uncommon to find foreign objects in bodies, old shrapnel, BB gun pellets from childhood accidents that were never removed. But in a child this young." She trailed off, looking troubled. Luke turned to Lila, who had been quiet throughout the examination. Her face had drained of color, her eyes fixed on the X-ray screen. "Lila, any idea what this could be?" he asked. She shook her head jerkily. "No idea." Her voice was thin, almost strangled. Doctor Patel made a note in Cora's chart. "We'll need to take a closer look during surgery. If it's interfering with the bone or joint function, we'll remove it." Luke nodded, but his attention was on his wife. Lila's hands were trembling, and her breathing had become shallow. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I just need some air," she replied, already backing toward the door. "And I should call my mother, let her know what's happening." Before Luke could respond, she'd slipped out of the examination room, leaving him alone with Cora and a growing sense that something was very, very wrong. Luke sat in the hospital waiting room, his elbows on his knees, staring at the worn carpet between his feet. Cora had been taken to pre-op 30 minutes ago, her face brave but frightened as the nurses wheeled her away. The memory of the small metal object in her X-ray kept replaying in his mind. Where was Lila? She'd left for air over an hour ago. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to her contact information. As his thumb hovered over the call button, movement caught his eye. Through the waiting room window, he spotted Lila in the corridor, her back to him as she spoke urgently in her phone. Luke rose, drawn by the tension visible in her stance. She hadn't seen him yet. He approached slowly, catching fragments of her conversation. Didn't know it would show up on an X-ray. Her voice was tight with stress. They're operating right now. Yes, he saw it. I don't know what to tell him. Luke stopped, frozen by the implications of what he was hearing. Lila knew about the object in Cora's arm. Knew, and had said nothing. He was about to step forward to confront her when a well-dressed man in his 40s approached Lila from the opposite direction. Luke instinctively stepped back into the shadow of a vending machine. The man was tall, with salt and pepper hair and an expensive watch that caught the light as he touched Lila's arm. She startled, then relaxed when she recognized him. Too relaxed, Luke thought, for a casual acquaintance. "Aaron," she said, sliding her phone into her pocket. Her voice carried clearly in the quiet hallway. "You didn't need to come." "Of course I did," the man Aaron replied. His voice was smooth, confident. "Everything is set. The countdown begins." Lila glanced around nervously. "Not here. Has the doctor said anything else about the chip?" Aaron asked, lowering his voice. "Chip?" Luke's stomach clenched. The metal object wasn't some random fragment, it was a chip, deliberately placed in his daughter's arm. "They're going to remove it during surgery," Lila whispered. Luke saw it on the X-ray. Aaron swore softly. "This complicates things. We'll need to move up the timeline." "I don't know if I can do this anymore," Lila said, her voice wavering. "Cora was hurt, Aaron. Really hurt." "It was an accident," Aaron replied dismissively. "The important thing is that we stick to the plan. You know what's at stake." They moved further down the corridor, their voices fading. Luke remained motionless, trying to process what he'd just witnessed. His wife and this stranger Aaron had put something in Cora's arm. Some kind of chip. And now they had a plan that involved his daughter. A cold rage began to build in his chest. Whatever was happening, he would get to the bottom of it. And if anyone had deliberately hurt Cora... Luke returned to the waiting room, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone again, but this time he opened the browser and typed in a search, Aaron Hayes Oakbrook. The first few results were social media profiles, not helpful. But the fourth link caught his eye, a business article about Aaron Hayes, described as a tech entrepreneur and venture capitalist. The photo matched the man he'd just seen with Lila. Luke saved the article, then searched Aaron Hayes Lila Halloran. Nothing relevant appeared. He tried Aaron Hayes Lila instead, and this time a photo from a charity gala 5 years ago popped up. Aaron and Lila stood side by side, champagne glasses in hand, both smiling for the camera point 5 years ago. Before Luke had even met Lila, a nurse approached, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Halloran, your daughter's in surgery now. Everything's going well so far." Luke nodded, closing the browser on his phone. "Thank you. How long will it take?" "About 2 hours," the nurse replied. "Is Mrs. Halloran around?" "There are some additional consent forms we need signed." "I'll find her," Luke said, rising from his seat. But as he walked toward the hallway where he'd last seen Lila and Aaron, a knot formed in his stomach. The more he learned, the less he recognized the woman he'd married. That be why the time they arrived home, Cora was asleep in the back seat, her newly casted arm supported by a sling. The surgery had gone well, according to Dr. Patel. The broken bone had been set with a small plate and screws, and she would make a full recovery, and the metal object, the chip, had been removed. It was unusual, Dr. Patel had told them, showing them the tiny device, no larger than a grain of rice. "Not something I've seen before. We're sending it to the lab for analysis." Lila had avoided Luke's gaze during the entire conversation, murmuring about how strange it was, how Cora must have somehow picked it up somewhere. Her lies made his skin crawl. Now, as Luke carried their sleeping daughter up to her bedroom, he watched Lila move around the house, turning on lights, adjusting the thermostat, acting normal. As if she hadn't been conspiring with another man just hours ago. As if she hadn't been involved in putting a tracking device, what else could it be, in their daughter's body. After settling Cora in bed, Luke closed her door quietly and made his way downstairs. In the kitchen, Lila was making tea, her back to him. "We need to talk," he said. She turned, a forced smile on her face. "About the hospital bills? I already called the insurance. About Aaron Hayes." The mug in her hand clattered against the counter. "Who?" "Don't," Luke said, the words sharp as a blade. "I saw you with him at the hospital. I heard you talking about the chip in Cora's arm." Lila's face drained of color. "Luke, I can explain." "Then explain," he said, crossing his arms. "Explain why our daughter had a tracking device in her body. Explain why you've been lying to me. It's not what you think." Lila's voice trembled. "Aaron is an old friend. From before we met. A friend who implants chips in children." Luke's voice rose despite his effort to keep it steady. "What kind of friend is that, Lila?" She flinched. It wasn't supposed to hurt her. It was just a precaution. A precaution against what? Lila fell silent, her eyes darting around the kitchen as if looking for an escape. "How long have you been seeing him?" Luke pressed. "It's not like that. The hell it isn't. I'm not blind, Lila. You've been distant for months. Always on your phone. Coming home late. And now this." He gripped the edge of the counter. "How long?" Lila's shoulders slumped. "About a year." The admission hit him like a physical blow. A year. While he'd been working long hours to provide for them. While he'd been coaching Cora's soccer team. Planning family vacations, his wife had been betraying him. What? The question came out hoarse. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated," he demanded. "What does Aaron want? What was that chip for?" Lila wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm tired, Luke. Can we please talk about this tomorrow?" "Cora needs." "Don't you dare use our daughter as a shield," Luke snapped. "Not after what you've done to her." Tears welled in Lila's eyes. "I never meant for her to get hurt. But you meant to put that thing in her arm." It wasn't a question. Lila said nothing, which was answer enough. Luke took a deep breath, trying to control the rage and hurt that threatened to overwhelm him. "I want the truth, Lila. All of it. Or I'm calling the police right now and reporting both you and Aaron for child endangerment." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't. Try me." For a long moment, they stared at each other across the kitchen. Then Lila sank into a chair at the table. "Aaron and I were together before I met you," she began, her voice low. "It ended badly, or so I thought. Then last year, he found me again. He said he'd never stopped loving me, that he'd made mistakes, but wanted to make things right. So you started an affair." Luke's voice was flat. Lila nodded, not meeting his eyes. "At first, it was just talking. Coffee. Then it became more. He made me feel special again, Luke. Like I mattered. And the chip." She hesitated. "Aaron has resources. Connections. He said the chip was a way to keep Cora safe. To know where she was at all times." "That's not your decision to make," Luke said. "Not without telling me. Not by putting something inside our daughter without her knowledge or consent." "I know," Lila whispered. "I was wrong. But Aaron can be persuasive." "What does he really want, Lila?" Luke pressed, not believing her explanation for a second. "I heard you both at the hospital. You talked about a plan, a timeline." Lila's eyes flicked up to his, then away. "It's nothing. Just talk." Luke slammed his hand on the table, making her jump. "Enough lies. What is Aaron planning?" The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Finally, Lila spoke. "He wanted to leave with him. Take Cora and start a new life. And you agreed to this?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "He has money, Luke. Real money. The kind we'll never have. He can give Cora opportunities we can't even imagine. So this is about money?" Luke felt sick. "You're willing to tear apart our family for a bigger house? Designer clothes?" "It's not just about money," Lila protested. "Aaron understands me. He sees me in a way you never have." Luke stared at her, this stranger wearing his wife's face. "And the chip. How does that fit into your grand romance?" Lila fidgeted with her wedding ring. "Aaron wanted insurance. A way to find us if anything went wrong with the plan." "Insurance." Luke repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. "And what about me? Where do I fit in this plan?" Lila's silence was damning. I see, Luke said quietly. I don't fit at all, do I? Once you're gone with Cora, I become irrelevant. It's not like that, Lila protested weakly. Then what is it like? Explain it to me, Lila. Help me understand how you could do this to us. But she had no answer, only more tears. Luke turned away, unable to look at her anymore. I'm going to check on Cora. When I come back, I want you gone. Luke, please. I'll sleep in Cora's room tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what happens next. But right now, I can't stand to be near you. He left her sitting at the kitchen table, her tears falling silently. As he climbed the stairs to Cora's room, his mind was already racing ahead. Something about Lila's explanation didn't add up. A tracking chip for Cora's safety? A plan to leave with a wealthy ex-boyfriend? There was more to this story, and Luke was determined to uncover every last detail. Not just for his sake, but for Cora's. In her bedroom, his daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing around her. Luke settled into the chair beside her bed, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. Whatever happened next, he would protect her. From Aaron Hayes, from Lila, if necessary, from anyone who threatened her well-being. That was a promise he intended to keep. Morning light filtered through Cora's bedroom curtains, rousing Luke from his uncomfortable slumber in the armchair. His neck ached from the awkward angle, but he'd been unwilling to leave his daughter alone. Not after what he'd learned. Cora stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Dad, I'm here, sweetheart, he said, moving to sit on the edge of her bed. How's the arm feeling? She grimaced, looking down at the cast. It hurts. I'll get your pain medication. The doctor said you should take it with food. Cora nodded, then frowned. Why did you sleep in my room? Luke forced a smile. Just want to make sure you were okay through the night. Where's Mom? The question sent a pang through his chest. Downstairs, I think. Let me check on your breakfast. He slipped out of the room, heart heavy with the knowledge that Cora's world was about to change irrevocably. In the hallway, he paused at the sound of Lila's voice coming from their bedroom. She was on the phone again, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Can't just disappear with her, Aaron. Luke knows something's wrong. No, I didn't tell him everything. Well, what was I supposed to say? By the way, your daughter has a tracking device because my lover wants to kidnap her? Luke froze, his blood turning to ice in his veins. The chip is gone now, Lila continued. The doctor removed it during surgery. I know that complicates things, but Aaron, please just listen. Luke pushed open the bedroom door. Lila spun around, her face paling when she saw him standing there. She quickly ended the call. Luke, kidnap, he said, the word like poison on his tongue. You were going to kidnap our daughter? Lila's eyes darted to the doorway behind him, checking if Cora might overhear. It's not kidnapping if I'm her mother. Is if you take her without my knowledge or consent, Luke countered. Was that the plan all along? Use the chip to track her movements, wait for the right moment, and then just disappear. Lila sank onto the edge of the bed. You don't understand? Then make me understand, Luke demanded. No more lies, Lila. I want the truth. All of it. She looked up at him, resignation in her eyes. Aaron isn't just an ex-boyfriend. He's powerful, connected. He has money, yes, but also influence. People who work for him, who do what he asks without question. What people? I don't know all the details, Lila admitted. He keeps that part of his life separate. But I know he runs more than just his tech companies. There's something else, something bigger. Luke crossed his arms. And you got involved with this man? Brought him into our lives? Into Cora's life? I didn't have a choice. Lila's voice rose. Then she glanced nervously at the door and lowered it again. When Aaron found me again last year, it wasn't a coincidence. He'd been watching us for a while. He knew about you, about Cora, about our life here. Why? What does he want with us? Lila hesitated. Not with us. With you. Luke stared at her, uncomprehending. Your work, she explained. The security systems you design for the military. Aaron has been trying to get access to that technology for years. The revelation hit Luke like a thunderbolt. His work as an electrical engineer included classified contracts with defense contractors' cutting-edge security systems designed to protect sensitive military installations. You told him about my work? Luke asked, disbelief coloring his voice. Not specifics, Lila said quickly. I don't know the specifics, but Aaron knew who you were, what you did. He thought I could help him get what he wanted. By seducing you? Turning you against me? Lila looked away. At first, but then he realized you were too careful. The security too tight. He couldn't get to your work directly, so he decided to use Cora instead. Luke said, the pieces falling into place. The chip wasn't for her safety. It was to track her so he could abduct her. Use her as leverage against me. Lila nodded miserably. He said no one would get hurt. That once he had what he wanted, he'd let her go. Let us all go. And you believed him. Luke's voice rose in incredulity. You were willing to risk our daughter's life on the word of a criminal. He's not a criminal, Lila protested weakly. He's a businessman. Businessmen don't implant tracking devices in children. Businessmen don't plan kidnappings. Luke ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the enormity of what he was hearing. What was supposed to happen next? Now that the chip is gone, Aaron has a backup plan, Lila whispered. He always does. What backup plan? Before she could answer, a small voice called from the hallway. Dad? Mom? They both turned to see Cora standing in the doorway, her good arm bracing against the frame for support. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with confusion. Why are you guys yelling? She asked. Luke forced his features into a calm mask. Just a disagreement, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. Let's get you some breakfast and your medication. He guided her toward the stairs, casting one last look at Lila over his shoulder. The conversation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After settling Cora with breakfast and a movie in the living room, Luke confronted Lila in the kitchen. Aaron Hayes isn't just after my work, is he? He asked quietly. There's more to this. Lila leaned against the counter, defeat written in every line of her body. He wants your money too. The inheritance from your parents. The patents you hold. Luke's parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving him a substantial inheritance. And his work had led to several valuable patents that provided a steady stream of royalty income. It wasn't billionaire wealth, but it was significant especially to someone like Aaron Hayes, who, despite his facade of success, might be hungry for more. So the plan was what? Kidnap Cora, force me to sign over my assets, give up my research. Lila nodded, and then we would disappear. New identities, new lives. Aaron has the connections to make that happen. With you at his side, Luke said bitterly. Was that part of the deal from the beginning? Or did he seduce you later? A flash of defiance crossed Lila's face. It wasn't like that. I loved Aaron once before you. When he came back into my life, those feelings resurfaced. He made me believe we could have a future together. A future built on betrayal, theft, and kidnapping. Luke shook his head in disgust. How could you, Lila? How could you do this to us? To Cora. I told myself it would be better for her in the long run, Lila said, tears welling in her eyes. Aaron has money, connections, schools in Europe, summer homes, privileges we could never give her, and a father who was willing to use her as a pawn, Luke countered, who put a tracking device in her body without her knowledge. You think that's better than the life we've built here? Lila had no answer. I want you out of this house, Luke said quietly. Today. Pack your things and go. Luke, please. You're going to take my daughter from me, he said, his voice cold. Use her as leverage to steal everything I've worked for. And all for what? Money? A fantasy life with a man who treats people like pawns on a chessboard. What about Cora? Lila asked. She needs her mother. What she needs is to be safe. And right now, that means away from you and away from Aaron Hayes. Luke's jaw tightened. I'm calling my lawyer this morning. And then I'm calling the police. Lila's face paled. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. What you and Hayes were planning is a crime. Multiple crimes. If you go to the police, Aaron will know, Lila warned. He has people everywhere. You'll be putting yourself and Cora in more danger. Luke considered this. She might be right if Hayes was as connected as she claimed. Going directly to the authorities could backfire. He needed time to think, to plan. Fine. No police. For now. But you're still leaving. Lila hesitated, then nodded slowly. Can I at least say goodbye to Cora? Luke wanted to refuse, to cut Lila out of their lives completely. But Cora would be confused, hurt. A clean break might be cruel. You can say you're going to stay with a friend for a few days, that we need some time apart. He fixed her with a hard stare. But if you say anything to upset her or hint at your plans with Hayes, I swear I'll make you regret it. Lila nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never wanted it to come to this, Luke. You have to believe me. I don't have to believe anything you say ever again, he replied coldly. You've lost that right. As Lila moved past him toward the living room, Luke caught her arm. One more thing. Your phone. Give it to me. What? What? Because I don't trust you not to contact Hayes the moment you're out of my sight. After a moment's hesitation, Lila pulled her phone from her pocket and handed it to him. Luke immediately powered it off and pocketed it. You can use the landline if you need to call someone to pick you up, he said. But you're not contacting Hayes from this house again. Lila's shoulders slumped in defeat as she made her way to the living room. Luke waited a moment, then followed, positioning himself where he could hear their conversation while giving them the illusion of privacy. Mommy needs to go stay with Aunt Jen for a few days, he heard Lila tell Cora, her voice artificially bright. Just until things settle down here. Because of my arm? Cora asked, confusion evident in her voice. No, sweetie. Daddy and we need a little time apart. To think about some things. Are you getting divorced? Cora's voice trembled on the question. Lila hesitated. I don't know, honey. But what I do know is that both Daddy and I love you very much. That will never change. Luke clenched his fists at his sides. Even now, Lila was lying. She hadn't loved Cora enough to protect her from Aaron Hayes. Hadn't loved her enough to put her safety above money and the promise of a luxurious life. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. He would never trust Lila again. And he would do whatever it took to keep Cora safe from both her and Aaron Hayes. Luke watched from the front window as Lila's rideshare disappeared down the street. She'd packed quickly a suitcase, a duffel bag, a few personal items. Not everything she owned, but enough for now. He'd kept her phone, returning it only after deleting all contacts and data. A small precaution, but necessary. In the living room, Cora had fallen asleep on the couch, the pain medication making her drowsy. Luke covered her with a blanket, then retreated to his home office, closing the door quietly behind him. His mind raced with the revelations of the past 24 hours. Lila's betrayal, the tracking chip in Cora's arm, Aaron Hayes' plan to use his daughter as leverage. It was almost too much to process, but he couldn't afford to fall apart now. Not when Cora's safety and his own hung in the balance. Luke pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Charlie Montgomery, his college roommate and friend who had gone on to become a police officer before retiring early after an injury in the line of duty. If anyone could help him navigate this mess, it was Charlie. He hit call. Luke, Charlie's gruff voice answered on the third ring. This is a surprise. Everything okay? No, Luke admitted, his voice tight. Everything is very much not okay. I need your help, Charlie. It's complicated. A pause. How complicated are we talking? My wife has been having an affair with a guy named Aaron Hayes. They put a tracking chip in Cora's arm as part of a plan to kidnap her and use her as leverage against me. Silence stretched over the line. Then, Jesus, Luke. That's not complicated. That's a thriller movie plot. Despite everything, Luke almost smiled. Charlie had always had a way of cutting through tension. Tell me about it. But it's real, Charlie. All of it. Where's Lila now? Gone. I kicked her out this morning after she confirmed everything. She's staying with a friend, supposedly. And Cora. Safe. For now. Luke rubbed his forehead, feeling the beginnings of a headache. But I don't know how long that will last. According to Lila, this Hayes guy is connected. Powerful. And now that his original plan is derailed, I'm worried about what he might do next. Have you gone to the police? Not yet. Lila warned me that Hayes has people everywhere. If he finds out I've reported this, she could be lying, Charlie pointed out. Trying to scare you off. Maybe. But I can't take that chance. Not with Cora. Charlie was quiet for a moment, thinking. Tell me more about this Hayes character. Luke recounted everything he knew: the tech entrepreneur facade, the hints at darker connections, the plan to steal Luke's patents and inheritance. Sounds like a real piece of work. Charlie said when he'd finished. Let me do some digging. I still have friends on the force who owe me favors. We can find out if Hayes is as connected as Lila claims. Thanks, Charlie. I appreciate it. In the meantime, you should take precautions. Change your routines. Keep Cora close. Maybe consider a security system for the house. Luke's mouth twisted in irony. I designed security systems for a living, Charlie. The house is already locked down tight, right? Of course. Charlie chuckled. Well, that's one advantage. Listen, I can come over later today. We can talk more in person, figure out a plan. That would be great. Cora's asleep now, but she'll be glad to see her Uncle Charlie. After hanging up, Luke sat back in his chair, feeling marginally better. Having Charlie on his side was a significant advantage. His friend knew how law enforcement worked, had connections that Luke lacked. Together, they might be able to untangle this mess before Hayes made his next move that a soft knock at the office door pulled him from his thoughts. Dad! Cora's voice was small, uncertain. Luke crossed to the door and opened it. His daughter stood in the hallway, looking small and vulnerable in her pajamas, her casted arm held protectively against her chest. Hey, sweetheart, how are you feeling? Okay, kinda sore. She peered past him into the office. Were you on the phone? Just talking to Uncle Charlie. He's going to come visit later. Cora's face brightened a bit. Really? Cool. Luke hesitated, then crouched down to her eye level. Cora, there's something I need to ask you. It's important. Her expression grew serious. About Mom leaving? No, about your arm. Before it got broken, did anyone ever touch it? A doctor, maybe, or a friend of Mom's? Cora's brow furrowed in confusion. Touch it how? Like, did anyone ever give you a shot? Or maybe tell you they were checking something on your arm? She thought for a moment, then shook her head. No, I don't think so. What about when you were asleep? Did you ever wake up with your arm feeling sore or different? Maybe like someone had touched it while you were sleeping? Cora's eyes widened. Is this about the metal thing the doctor found in my x-ray? Luke nodded, surprised by her perceptiveness. Yes, we're trying to figure out how it got there. Cora chewed her lower lip, thinking, I don't remember anything like that. But she trailed off, uncertain. But what, sweetheart? You can tell me. Last month, when I had that really bad cold and Mom gave me the medicine that made me super sleepy, I woke up in the night and someone was in my room. Luke's heart rate quickened. Who? I thought it was you or Mom. But it was dark, and I was really tired from the medicine. They left as soon as I sat up. Did you see who it was? Cora shook her head. No, but the next morning my arm was itchy. Right here. She pointed to the spot near her elbow where the chip had been discovered. I thought maybe a bug bit me. Luke fought to keep his expression neutral, though inside he was seething. They drug her, waited until she was vulnerable, and implanted the chip while she slept. Thanks for telling me, Cora. That helps. She studied his face. Dad, what's really going on? Why did Mom leave? Luke sighed, struggling with how much to tell her. She deserved some truth, but the full story would only frighten her. Mom and I are having some problems, he said finally. And there's a man someone Mom knew before she met me who's causing trouble for our family. Uncle Charlie is going to help us sort it out. Is that why the metal thing was in my arm? Because of this man? Sometimes Luke forgot how perceptive his daughter could be. Yes, but you don't need to worry about that now. The doctors took it out, and I'm going to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. Cora nodded solemnly. I heard you and Mom fighting this morning. You said something about kidnapping. Luke's stomach dropped. How much had she overheard? Was someone going to kidnap me, Dad? The fear in her eyes broke his heart. He pulled her into a gentle hug, careful of her injured arm. No one is going to take you anywhere, he promised fiercely. I won't let that happen. Ever. As Cora clung to him, Luke's resolve hardened. Aaron Hayes had already stolen his wife. He'd invaded their home, drugged his daughter, implanted a tracking device in her body. But that was where it ended. Whatever Hayes planned next, Luke would be ready. The game had changed. Now, it was Luke who would be one step ahead. Charlie Montgomery arrived at 4 o'clock, his tall frame filling the doorway as Luke let him in. Despite being in his mid-40s, Charlie still carried himself with the alertness of a cop, eyes scanning his surroundings, noting exits and entrances, potential threats, and escape routes. Good to see you, Luke, he said, clasping Luke's hand in a firm handshake. Though I wish it were under better circumstances. Thanks for coming, Luke replied, leading him into the living room where Cora was curled up with a book. Her face lit up when she saw Charlie. Uncle Charlie. Hey, kiddo, Charlie said, his stern expression softening. Looks like you got yourself in a tangle. He nodded at her cast. I fell playing soccer, Cora explained. The doctor had to put metal in my arm to fix the bone. Well, now you're part robot, Charlie said with a wink. That's pretty cool. Cora giggled, some of the tension leaving her small shoulders. Luke had been worried about her all day. She'd been quiet, withdrawn, clearly processing her mother's sudden departure and the strange tension in the house. Cora, Uncle Charlie and I need to talk in my office, Luke said. Will you be okay out here for a little while? She nodded, returning to her book. I'm fine. In the office, Charlie accepted the coffee Luke offered and settled into a chair. She's holding up okay, he asked quietly. Luke shrugged. As well as can be expected. She knows something's wrong, but I haven't told her everything. Probably for the best. Charlie took a sip of his coffee. So, I did some digging on your friend Aaron Hayes. And Lila wasn't entirely wrong. The guy's connected, all right, but not in the way she might have led you to believe. Luke leaned forward. What do you mean? Hayes runs what looks like a legitimate tech business on the surface. Smart home systems, security software, that kind of thing. But according to my source, there's a shadow operation beneath it all. Corporate espionage, mostly stealing trade secrets, proprietary tech, anything that can give him an edge. Or make him a profit, Luke added grimly. Exactly. He's never been charged with anything serious, but his name has come up in a few investigations. Always as a person of interest, never a suspect. What about law enforcement connections? Lila implied he had people everywhere. Charlie shook his head. My source couldn't confirm anything like that, but he did say Hayes employs ex-military guys for security. Professional, disciplined, the kind who know how to stay under the radar. Luke absorbed this information. So his operation isn't as vast as Lila claimed, but he's still dangerous. I'd say so, yes. Charlie set down his mug. The good news is we're not dealing with some criminal mastermind with half the police force in his pocket. The bad news is he's still capable of causing a lot of trouble. Luke filled Charlie in on what Cora had told him about the night someone had been in her room, how she'd been drugged. Charlie's expression darkened. That crosses a line. Using a kid like that. I know. Luke's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The question is, what's his next move? The chip is gone. Lila's out of the house. His original plan is shot. He'll adapt, Charlie said bluntly. Men like Hayes don't just give up when things go sideways. He's invested too much time and effort to walk away now. So what do we do? Wait for him to make a move? Not necessarily. Charlie leaned forward. Lowering his voice, though, there was no one to overhear. We can be proactive. Start building a case against him. How? Evidence. Records of the tracking device. Medical reports. Cora's statement about someone being in her room. And Lila, she's a potential witness. If she's willing to talk, to admit what Hayes was planning. Luke shook his head. I don't think we can count on Lila. Even after everything. She seemed more afraid of Hayes than concerned about Cora. People can surprise you, Charlie said, especially when they realize they've been used. And for what you've told me, Hayes has been using Lila from the beginning. Before Luke could respond, his phone rang. The screen displayed unknown number. Should I? He asked, glancing at Charlie. Put on speaker, Charlie advised. Luke accepted the call, hitting the speaker button. Hello, Dad. Cora's voice, small and frightened, came through the line. Luke's heart lurched. Cora? Where are you? Why are you calling from another phone? Mom came and got me, she said, her voice trembling. She said it was an emergency. That you knew about it. Luke's blood ran cold. He glanced toward the living room where Cora had been reading just minutes ago. The room was empty, her book abandoned on the couch. Where are you now, sweetheart? He asked, keeping his voice calm despite the panic rising in his chest. In a car, with Mom and a man. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She said his name is Aaron. He gave me his phone to call you. Luke and Charlie exchanged alarmed glances. Put your mom on the phone, Cora, Luke instructed, his voice steady despite the rage and fear coursing through him at a rustling sound. Then Lila's voice came through. "Luke, what the hell are you doing, Lila?" he demanded. "Bring her back. Now." "I can't," Lila replied, her voice tense. "Aaron says." "I don't care what Aaron says. She's our daughter." "Put Hayes on," Charlie interjected, his cop voice in full effect at a pause. Then a smooth, cultured male voice replaced Lila's. "Mr. Halloran, I've been looking forward to making your acquaintance. Bring my daughter back. Hayes, or I swear to God." Now, Hayes interrupted. "Let's not resort to threats. This situation can be resolved quite simply. I have something you want your daughter, and you have something I want. My research. Among other things, yes. Your security systems are quite impressive. Several of my clients would pay handsomely for that technology. And if I refuse..." Hayes chuckled, the sound sending a chill down Luke's spine. "I don't think you will. Not when your daughter's safety is at stake." In the background, Luke could hear Cora's frightened voice asking to go home. "If you hurt her," Luke began. "No one is going to hurt her," Hayes assured him, his tone maddeningly calm. "As long as you cooperate. I'll be in touch with specific instructions. In the meantime, I suggest you start gathering those patents and research files. Oh, and Mr. Halloran? No police. I'll know if you involve them." The line went dead. Luke stared at the phone in his hand, a cold fury building in his chest. "He took her. That bastard took my daughter." Charlie placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "We'll get her back, Luke, but we need to be smart about this." "Smart? He has Cora." Luke fought to keep his voice level, and Lila helped him. "She came into my house, took our daughter, and handed her over to him. Lila might be our best chance at finding them," Charlie pointed out. "Did you notice anything in the background of the call? Any sound that might give us a clue where they are?" Luke forced himself to think, to push past the panic. "No, just car sounds. They're driving somewhere. Most likely to a secure location where Hayes feels in control. Somewhere he can hold Cora while he negotiates with you." Charlie's mind was clearly working in cop mode now. "Did you get any sense of Lila's state of mind? Did she sound afraid? Confident? Tense? Nervous?" Luke frowned, recalling the conversation. "She started to say Aaron says before I cut her off, almost like she was following his script. That might be significant," Charlie mused. "If she's not entirely on board with this, she could be a weak link in Hayes' plan." Luke shook his head. "I can't count on that. Not after everything she's done." "Fair enough." Charlie paced the office, thinking, "Here's what we know. Hayes wants your research, patents, probably access to your financial accounts. He's using Cora as leverage. He's cautioned against police involvement, and he has Lila working with him, though possibly under duress. So what do? We prepare to give him what he wants," Charlie said simply. "At least, that's what we let him think." Luke frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean we play his game, but with our own rules." Charlie's eyes gleamed with determination. "We set a trap, and when Hayes walks into it, we take him down and get Cora back." For the first time since the phone call, Luke felt a glimmer of hope. "How do we do that?" Charlie smiled grimly. "First, we need to get a message to Cora. Something subtle, something Hayes won't pick up on. Does she have any personal items with her? A watch, a necklace, anything?" Luke thought for a moment. "Her cast, the one on her broken arm. It has a small pocket sewn into the lining for itching relief, a little wooden stick you can slide in to scratch under the cast. I put it there this morning." "Perfect. If she knows to check there, we might be able to use that." Luke nodded, understanding dawning. "And I think I know exactly what message to send." Gray clouds hung low over the abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. Once a bustling part of Oakbrook's industrial district, the area now stood neglected, a perfect setting for the confrontation about to unfold. Luke checked his watch, 7:15 p.m. Hayes' instructions had been clear. Come alone, bring the research files and patent documentation, and arrive precisely at 7:30. No police, no tricks, or Cora would pay the price. "Ready?" Charlie asked from the driver's seat of the nondescript sedan they'd borrowed from a friend of his. Less chance of being recognized that way. Luke nodded, tightening his grip on the leather briefcase beside him. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember the plan," Charlie reminded him. "I'll circle around back. Once I'm in position, Give me 10 minutes, then go in. Keep Hayes talking as long as possible. I know, Luke said. And if anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Charlie cut him off firmly. We've thought this through. Hayes is expecting a desperate father willing to give up everything for his daughter. That's exactly what you'll give him right up until the moment we turn the tables. Luke had spent the past 24 hours in a cold rage, methodically preparing for this meeting. The briefcase at his side contained exactly what Hayes had demanded: his research files, patent documentation, access codes to his financial accounts. What Hayes didn't know was that the information had been carefully altered. The account access would trigger a silent alarm at the bank. The research files contained subtle flaws that would render them useless. And woven throughout it all was a digital tracker that would activate the moment anyone attempted to download or copy the files. If Hayes managed to slip away today, he'd leave a bright digital trail for authorities to follow. It's time, Charlie said, checking his own watch. I'll head around back. Remember, 10 minutes. Luke watched his friend disappear into the gathering darkness before turning his attention back to the warehouse. Somewhere inside, Cora was waiting. His daughter. The thought of her afraid, in the hands of someone like Hayes, made his blood boil, but he couldn't afford anger now. He needed clarity. Focused at exactly 7:28 p.m., Luke stepped out of the car, briefcase in hand, and approached the warehouse's main entrance. The heavy metal door slid open with a creak, revealing a cavernous space inside. Right on time, Mr. Halloran. Aaron Hayes' smooth voice echoed across the empty warehouse floor. I appreciate punctuality. Luke's eyes adjusted to the dim lighting. Hayes stood in the center of the room, tall and well-dressed in a tailored suit that seemed absurdly out of place in the dilapidated surroundings. Beside him, Lila hovered uncertainly, her face pale and drawn. And there, seated on a chair several feet behind them, was Cora. Her broken arm was cradled in her lap, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. But when she saw Luke, her expression brightened with hope. Dad, she called. I'm here, sweetheart. Luke replied, his eyes never leaving Hayes. Everything's going to be okay. Hayes smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. That depends entirely on you, Mr. Halloran. I trust you brought what I asked for. Luke raised the briefcase slightly. Everything. Now, let my daughter go. All in good time. Hayes gestured to a metal table positioned between them. Why don't you place the briefcase there and step back? Once I verify the contents, we could discuss Cora's release. Luke approached slowly, setting the briefcase on the table. As he did, he noticed Lila watching him, an unreadable expression on her face. Was that regret in her eyes? Guilt? Or was she simply playing another role in Hayes' elaborate scheme? How did you do this, Lila? Luke asked quietly. She's her daughter, too. It's not what you think, Lila replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted. That's enough. Hayes interrupted sharply. Ms. Halloran has made her choice, Luke. She understands the opportunities that await all of us once this unfortunate business is concluded. Luke's gaze hardened as he looked at his wife. Is that true, Lila? Have you made your choice? Something flickered across Lila's face, doubt, perhaps, or fear. But before she could respond, Hayes stepped forward and flipped open the briefcase. Digital files, account access codes, patent documentation. Hayes murmured, rifling through the papers. It appears to be all here. But of course, I'll need to verify. You have what you want, Luke said firmly. Now let Cora go. Hayes chuckled, the sound echoing coldly through the warehouse. You misunderstand the situation, Mr. Halloran. This isn't a simple exchange. You see, once I have what I need, what's to stop you from going to the authorities? No, I'm afraid Cora will be accompanying us for a while longer. Insurance, you might say. Luke's hands clenched into fists at his sides. This was the moment he'd been preparing for. That wasn't our deal. I'm altering the deal, Hayes replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. Pray I don't alter it further. From behind Hayes, Cora caught Luke's eye. Slowly, deliberately, she reached her good hand into the pocket of her cast, then gave a small nod. The message had been received. You think you're in control here, Luke said, taking a step forward. You think you've thought of everything. But you've made one critical mistake, Hayes. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? You underestimated me. Luke's voice was ice. You thought I was just an engineer. A soft target. A man who could be manipulated through his wife and threatened through his child. And aren't you? Hayes asked, seemingly amused. No, Luke replied. I'm the man who's going to destroy you. At that moment, several things happened in rapid succession. Cora leapt from her chair, pulling a small capsule from her cast pocket and throwing it to the ground. A cloud of blinding smoke erupted, filling the immediate area. From the back of the warehouse came the sound of breaking glass as Charlie made his entrance. And Luke, who had been waiting for this exact moment, surged forward, tackling Hayes to the ground before the man could react. They hit the concrete floor hard, Hayes grunting in pain as Luke's weight drove the air from his lungs. But Hayes was no stranger to physical confrontation. He twisted, bringing up a knee that caught Luke in the ribs. Pain exploded through Luke's side, but he held on, grappling with Hayes as they rolled across the floor. Through the chaos, Luke was dimly aware of Charlie rushing toward Cora, sweeping her into his arms and heading for safety. One part of the plan, at least, was working. You're finished, Hayes, Luke growled, managing to pin the man beneath him. The police are already on their way. Everything in that briefcase is compromised. You have nothing. Hayes' face contorted with rage. You fool. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? The people I know? The reach I have. I know exactly who you are, Luke replied coldly. A thief. A kidnapper. A man who uses children as pawns in his games. With a sudden burst of strength, Hayes shoved Luke aside and scrambled to his feet. In the swirling smoke, Luke lost sight of him momentarily. Then came the distinctive click of a gun being cocked. Enough games. Hayes' voice came from somewhere to Luke's right. Where is she? Where's the girl? Safe, Luke replied, slowly rising. Far from you. Luke. Lila's terrified voice cut through the haze. He has a gun. Luke ducked just as a shot rang out, the bullet embedding itself in a wooden beam above his head. He rolled behind a stack of crates, heart pounding in his chest. Come out, wherever you are, Hayes called, his voice taking on a sing-song quality that sent chills down Luke's spine. You can't hide forever, Halloran. Luke's mind raced. The plan had gone sideways. He needed to keep Hayes occupied until the police arrived. Charlie would have called them by now, but a gun changed the equation. It's over, Hayes, he called out. The authorities are already tracking your digital footprint. They know about your operation, your connections. You're done. Perhaps, Hayes replied, his voice closer now. But I can still make sure you don't live to see me taken down. A shadow moved in the thinning smoke. Luke tensed, ready to move. Aaron, stop. Lila's voice, desperate and pleading. This isn't what you promised. No one was supposed to get hurt. Quiet. Hayes snapped. You've already proven your loyalty is questionable, Lila. Don't make it worse. Another shadow, this one to Luke's left. He shifted, positioning himself behind the sturdiest crate. The smoke was clearing now, visibility improving with each passing second. You never loved me, did you? Lila asked, her voice trembling. All those promises, the future you described. It was just manipulation. A way to get what you wanted. Does it matter? Hayes replied, his attention momentarily diverted. Love, loyalty, trust are just words, Lila. Tools to get what we want. And what I want right now is to finish this. It was the opening Luke needed. With Hayes' attention on Lila, Luke lunged from behind the crates, tackling the man around the waist. The gun flew from Hayes' hand, skittering across the concrete floor. They crashed to the ground once more, Hayes fighting with the desperation of a man who knew he was cornered. But this time, Luke had the advantage. Channeling all his rage, all his fear for Cora, all his hurt at Lila's betrayal, he drove his fist into Hayes' jaw. The man's head snapped back, stunning him momentarily. Luke hit him again and again, conscious only of the need to neutralize the threat. Luke, stop. Lila's voice penetrated his fury. You'll kill him. Luke froze, his fist raised for another blow. Hayes lay beneath him, blood trickling from his split lip, his eyes dazed. Why do you care? Luke demanded, not looking at Lila. After everything he's done, after what you both planned for Cora. Because this isn't you, Lila replied softly. You're not a killer. You're a protector, a father. Luke stared down at Hayes, the rage still coursing through his veins. It would be so easy to continue, to make Hayes pay for every moment of fear, every threat against his family. But Lila was right. That wasn't who he was. With an effort, Luke pushed himself away from Hayes, rising to his feet. The sound of sirens in the distance grew louder, the police finally arriving. It's over, he told Hayes, who lay groaning on the floor. You've lost. As if to punctuate his words, the warehouse doors burst open, flooding the space with the red and blue lights of police vehicles. Officers poured in, weapons drawn. Luke Halloran, one of them called. Here, Luke replied, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. The man on the floor is Aaron Hayes. He's the one you want. As the officers moved in to secure Hayes, Luke finally turned to Lila. She stood several feet away, tears streaming down her face. Is Cora really safe? She asked. Luke nodded. Charlie got her out. She's waiting in his car, away from all this. Relief washed over Lila's features, followed quickly by shame. Luke, don't. He cut her off, his voice hard. Just don't. Whatever explanation you think you have, whatever justification you've created in your mind, I don't want to hear it. You betrayed us, Lila. Betrayed me. Betrayed Cora. There's no coming back from that. A police officer approached them. Sir, ma'am, we'll need statements from both of you. Luke nodded, then turned back to Lila one last time. Goodbye, Lila. When all this is over, when the legal system has dealt with Hayes and decided your part in his scheme, remember one thing. You will never see Cora again. I'll make sure of it. Without waiting for her response, he turned and walked toward the warehouse entrance, toward the night, toward his daughter. The weight that had pressed on his chest since Cora's injury began to lift. It wasn't over there would be investigations, statements, court appearances. But the immediate danger had passed, and Luke knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing and no one would ever threaten his family again. The days following the warehouse confrontation passed in a blur of police statements, evidence collection, and hushed conversations with lawyers. Luke moved through it mechanically, his focus on one thing only, protecting Cora. Charlie had been invaluable throughout, using his connections to expedite the process and keep Cora's involvement to a minimum. The evidence against Hayes was substantial. The tracking chip removed from Cora's arm, the recorded phone conversation, witness statements, and most damning of all, Hayes' own attempted assault at the warehouse. Now, a week later, Luke stood in the office of Detective Marissa Alvarez, listening as she updated him on the investigation. Hayes isn't talking much, she explained, shuffling through papers on her desk. But his empire is crumbling. Once we had probable cause to search his properties, we found evidence linking him to corporate espionage operations targeting at least 5 major tech companies. What about his connections? Luke asked. He implied he had people everywhere. Detective Alvarez smiled thinly. Mostly bluster, it seems. He did employ several ex-military personnel as security consultants, and he had a network of informants in various companies. But nothing like the shadow organization your wife described. Ex-wife, Luke corrected automatically. The divorce papers had been filed the day after the warehouse incident. Right. Alvarez nodded sympathetically. Speaking of which, Lila Halloran has been cooperating with the investigation. Her testimony has been particularly helpful in understanding Hayes' operation. Is she facing charges? The question came out more neutrally than Luke felt. Part of him wanted Lila punished for her betrayal. Another part remembered the mother of his child, the woman he'd once loved. That's still being determined, Alvarez replied carefully. The DA is considering reduced charges in exchange for her continued cooperation. Child endangerment, conspiracy, but likely not kidnapping, given her actions at the warehouse. Luke frowned. Her actions? What do you mean? According to multiple witnesses, including Officer Montgomery, Lila Halloran was actively trying to de-escalate the situation. She warned you about the gun, distracted Hayes at a critical moment, and ultimately may have prevented a more violent outcome. Luke absorbed this information in silence. Lila's intervention had seemed genuine in the moment, but he'd been too angry, too hurt to acknowledge it. Now, The detective's words forced him to reconsider not Lila's guilt, which remained certain, but perhaps the completeness of her moral capitulation. "There's something else you should know," Alvarez continued, pulling a folder from her desk drawer. "We found these during the search of Hayes's primary residence." She slid several photographs across the desk. Luke picked them up, his stomach tightening as he recognized himself in the images. Him leaving work. Him coaching Cora's soccer team. Him and Lila at a restaurant. "Hayes had been watching you for over a year," Alvarez explained. "Long before Lila became involved with him again. According to what we've pieced together, he reconnected with her specifically to get to you and your work. She still chose to help him," Luke said, the bitterness rising in his throat once more. "Yes, she did," Alvarez agreed. "But we also found these." Another set of photos joined the first. These showed Lila and Cora at school, at the park, shopping. And in the background of several, the same nondescript man, watching. "Hayes had his people following them too," Alvarez said. "And we found this in his safe." She handed Luke a final photograph. It showed Lila's parents, an elderly couple Luke had met only twice before they passed away, standing in front of their home in Florida. On the back, someone had written an address and the words insurance policy. "He was threatening her family," Luke said quietly. "It appears so," Alvarez confirmed. "Though that doesn't excuse her actions, it may help explain them." Luke set the photos down, his mind churning with this new information. Hayes wasn't just a corporate thief. He was a calculating predator who had targeted Luke's entire family. "What happens now?" he asked. "Hayes will face multiple federal charges: kidnapping, extortion, corporate espionage, illegal surveillance, weapons charges. He'll be in prison for a very long time." Alvarez closed the folder. "Your testimony will be crucial, Mr. Halloran, and potentially Cora's, though we'll do everything possible to minimize her involvement." Luke nodded. "Whatever it takes to make sure he never comes near my family again." "There's one more thing," Alvarez said, her expression softening slightly. "Lila Halloran has requested to see Cora. Just once, before whatever legal consequences she faces." Luke's jaw tightened. "No, absolutely not. It's your decision," Alvarez said neutrally. "But the request is on record. She is still Cora's mother. A mother who helped put a tracking device in her daughter's body," Luke countered. "Who participated in her kidnapping. Who chose a criminal over her own child." "All true," Alvarez acknowledged. "I'm not advocating either way, Mr. Halloran. Just relaying the request." Luke rose from his chair, eager to be done with this conversation. "Is there anything else you need from me today, Detective?" "Not today. We'll be in touch about formal testimony schedules." As Luke turned to leave, Alvarez called after him. "Mr. Halloran, for what it's worth, your daughter is lucky to have you. Not everyone would have handled this situation with the restraint that you did." Luke paused at the door. "It wasn't restraint, Detective. It was clarity. Hayes took my wife. He nearly took my daughter. But he didn't take my humanity. I wasn't about to let him have that too." With those words, he left, stepping out into the bright afternoon sunlight. Charlie was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car. "How'd it go?" he asked as Luke approached. "About as expected." Luke sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The case against Hayes is solid. He's going away for a long time." "Good." Charlie nodded firmly. "And Lila, still cooperating. They're talking reduced charges." Luke hesitated, then added, "Alvarez showed me evidence that Hayes had been threatening Lila's family, using them as leverage." Charlie's eyebrows rose. "Does that change how you feel about what she did?" Luke considered the question seriously. "It explains some things. But no, it doesn't change the fundamental betrayal. She had choices, Charlie. She could have come to me, could have gone to the authorities. Instead, she chose to protect herself by risking our daughter. People make bad decisions under pressure," Charlie observed. "Not excusing it, just saying." "I know." Luke looked out across the parking lot, his thoughts far away. "But some decisions can't be undone. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired." Charlie clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on. Cora's waiting at my place with Jessica. She was making cookies when I left." The mention of his daughter brought a genuine smile to Luke's face for the first time that day. "Let's not keep her waiting, then." As they drove away from the police station, Luke felt a chapter closing. Hayes's threat was neutralized. The legal system would handle the rest. Now his focus could return to where it belonged, helping Cora heal, rebuilding their lives, moving forward. Some people might have been able to forgive what Lila had done, might have found a path to reconciliation given the pressure Hayes had applied. But Luke knew himself too well. Betrayal, once experienced, left a mark too deep to ever fully fade. And when that betrayal endangered his child, there was no coming back from that. Not ever. Some might call harsh. Unforgiving. Luke called it clarity. The clarity to know that while many things in life were negotiable, the safety of his family never would be. 3 months later, autumn had transformed Oakbrook into a canvas of reds and golds. Luke stood at the sidelines of the soccer field, watching as Cora jogged through a series of warm-up drills. Her cast had come off 6 weeks ago, and though she still attended physical therapy twice a week, her recovery had been remarkable. Children were resilient that way. "She looks good out there," Charlie commented, handing Luke a cup of coffee from the concession stand. His wife, Jessica, stood beside him, their 3-year-old son perched on her hip. "Better every day," Luke agreed, accepting the coffee gratefully. The morning air was crisp, carrying the promise of winter to come. Her therapist says she might be back to full strength by spring season. Out on the field, Cora spotted them and waved enthusiastically. Luke waved back, his chest swelling with pride and love. After everything they'd been through, these simple moments felt like miracles. In court. The trial of Aaron Hayes was ongoing, a complex legal proceeding involving multiple federal agencies. Luke had testified the previous month, providing detailed accounts of Hayes' extortion attempt and the kidnapping. Cora's involvement had been kept to a minimum, her statement taken privately by a child advocate and entered into evidence without requiring her presence in court. Lila's situation had resolved more quickly. In exchange for her comprehensive testimony against Hayes, she'd accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and most painfully for her severely restricted access to Cora. Supervised visits only, no overnight stays, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of their home. Luke hadn't seen her since the warehouse confrontation. Charlie, who had attended some of the hearings, reported that she seemed changed, thinner, subdued, genuinely remorseful. Luke acknowledged the information without comment. Whatever journey Lila was on now, it was separate from his. "Earth to Luke," Charlie said, waving a hand in front of his face. "You with US, buddy?" Luke blinked, pulling himself back to the present. "Sorry, just thinking. About the house." Jessica asked sympathetically. The house. Their old house in Oakbrook had too many memories, too many shadows. Luke had put on the market a month ago, and they'd accepted an offer last week. The new place was smaller, but brighter, somehow a fresh start in a neighboring town with a good school district and a fenced backyard for Cora to play in. Partly, Luke admitted, "We signed the final papers tomorrow. Then you'll officially be our neighbors," Jessica said, smiling. "Cora and Josh can have playdates without needing a 30-minute drive." The thought warmed Luke. Charlie and Jessica had been rocks throughout the entire ordeal, offering support, childcare, and a listening ear whenever needed. Having them nearby in the new community felt right. "Dad!" Cora came running over, cheeks flushed from exertion. "Coach says I can play 10 minutes today if I feel up to it." "That's great, sweetheart," Luke said, giving her a high five. "Just remember what Dr. Morris said. If it starts to hurt, even a little bit, you come right out." I know, Cora replied, rolling her eyes in that preteen way that somehow managed to be both annoying and endearing. "Can Uncle Charlie and Aunt Jessica stay for the game?" "Wouldn't miss it, Squirt," Charlie assured her, ruffling her hair. As Cora raced back to join her teammates, Jessica touched Luke's arm. "She's doing really well, Luke. Not just the physical recovery, but everything else." Luke nodded, knowing what she meant. The psychological impact of the kidnapping, of Lila's betrayal and sudden absence from their daily lives, these wounds had been less visible, but just as real as Cora's broken arm. The child psychologist they'd been seeing had reported steady progress, though there were still nightmares occasionally, still moments of sudden anxiety or sadness. "She's stronger than I am," Luke said quietly. Sometimes I look at her, and I'm just in awe of her resilience, her capacity for joy despite everything. She gets that from her father, Charlie commented, his gaze thoughtful. You've been a rock, Luke. Not many people could have navigated this situation with the grace you've shown. Luke shook his head, uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what any parent would do. Protected my child. Not every parent would have succeeded, Jessica pointed out gently. You kept your head, worked with the authorities, didn't let rage or revenge consume you, even when it would have been understandable. The referee's whistle blew, signaling the start of the game. Cora took her position on the bench, eagerly watching her teammates take the field. Speaking of authorities, Charlie said, lowering his voice, I heard from Alvarez yesterday. Hayes' legal team is floating the idea of a plea deal. The evidence is too overwhelming. They're trying to avoid a trial. What kind of deal? Luke asked, his attention sharpening. 25 to 30 years. No possibility of parole for at least 20. They drop a few of the lesser charges, but the kidnapping and extortion would stick. Charlie sipped his coffee. Alvarez thinks the DA will take it. Solid outcome. No risk of a jury doing something unpredictable. Luke considered this. Part of him had wanted the full spectacle of a trial, wanted Hayes to face public judgment for his actions. But another part, a larger part, just wanted it over. Wanted to stop having their lives revolve around court dates and statements and evidence. If it's a good deal for the prosecution, I'm fine with it, he said finally. As long as he's put away for a very long time. He will be, Charlie assured him, and his network has been dismantled. The FBI is still unraveling all his illegal operations, but the empire is well and truly fallen. On the field, Cora's team scored a goal, and the assembled parents erupted in cheers. Luke clapped and whistled, catching his daughter's excited gaze from the bench. You know, Jessica said thoughtfully, bouncing her son on her hip, I was worried about you guys for a while there. After everything happened, you seemed, I don't know, hardened. Like you might never let anyone close again. Luke glanced at her, surprised by the observation. I had to be strong. For Cora. Strong, yes. But there's a difference between strength and isolation. Jessica smiled as her son grabbed at her scarf. But lately, I've seen change. You're opening up again. Building a new life, not just surviving the aftermath of the old one. Luke considered her words. It was true that in the immediate wake of Lila's betrayal, he'd withdrawn into himself, focusing solely on Cora's welfare and the legal proceedings. Trust had become a luxury he couldn't afford. But over time, with the support of friends like Charlie and Jessica, with the daily example of Cora's resilience, something had shifted. I'm getting there, he acknowledged. Some days are harder than others, but we're moving forward. The coach waved Cora onto the field, and she jumped up, casting one quick, nervous glance at Luke before jogging into position. He gave her a thumbs up, his heart swelling with pride at her courage. That's what matters, Charlie said, clapping Luke on the shoulder. Moving forward, one day at a time. As Cora maneuvered across the field, her movements careful but increasingly confident, Luke felt a sense of peace settle over him. The past few months had taught him harsh lessons about trust, about betrayal, about the lengths he would go to protect what mattered most. But they had also revealed strengths he hadn't known. He possessed resilience, clarity, the capacity to rebuild from the ground up. Hayes was finished, his crimes exposed, his freedom forfeit. Lila had made her choices and would live with the consequences. And Luke had emerged from the crucible not unscathed but unbroken. His priorities crystal cleared on the field. Cora intercepted a pass and began dribbling toward the goal, her face a mask of concentration. The crowd around Luke held its collective breath, then erupted as she passed to a teammate who scored. Yes, Luke shouted, punching the air. That's my girl. Cora turned, seeking him out in the crowd, her smile brighter than the autumn sun. In that moment, Luke knew with absolute certainty that they would be okay. More than okay. The bonds of family, real family, built on love and trust and unbreakable loyalty, would see them through whatever came next. The victory wasn't just about defeating Hayes or bringing Lila's betrayal to light. It was about standing firm when the foundation shook, about protecting what mattered most when everything else fell away. It was about a father and daughter finding their way forward together, stronger for having weathered the storm. And as Cora jogged back into position, her eyes bright with accomplishment, Luke knew that was a victory worth fighting for. Worth everything.